This is CBC Here and Now.
You're destroying my property!
He's trying to run me over with it?
He's pushing me away!
Tonight, a landlord and tenant dispute gets beyond heated.
With the landlord getting behind the wheel of a backhoe.
There's definitely anxiety. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't.
And we'll hear from a teacher in Corner Brook about what it's like to be back in the classroom.
I think as a school community, we're keeping social, emotional wellness at the front.
A large area of low pressure bringing some relatively mild temperatures to parts of coastal Labrador, and then we've got some snow squalls on the go for the island.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. We start tonight with a big change in how vaccines will roll out. And Peter, it means more people will be vaccinated sooner.
Yeah, the province is now going to delay when it gives people the second dose of vaccines. That frees up more doses to get people their first shot sooner. Until now, the second doses have been given 3 or 4 weeks after the first ones. That's what was done during the clinical trials. But now Dr. Janice Fitzgerald says evidence shows the first dose is still effective at keeping people from getting sick. So starting right away, they're going to wait 3 months to give the second doses.
This will allow us to protect close to 40,000 extra people with 1 dose of a highly effective vaccine by the end of March. It will also help to prevent symptomatic disease, hospitalization, and deaths during this most crucial time of higher disease prevalence and limited vaccine supply.
But what does this mean for people waiting on their second dose? Will this leave them more susceptible to COVID? Dr. Fitzgerald says you need to look at it a different way.
What we have to remember when it comes to vaccine protection is that the more people that are protected, the more protected we all are, right? So I think allowing us to get more people protected will actually be of more benefit to their loved ones in congregate living settings, and making sure that our society is protected faster is certainly going to help in the long run.
Now, the province will also be receiving 7,000 doses of the newly approved AstraZeneca vaccine in the next week, but it's still trying to figure out who's going to get those. All of this comes on a day with just 3 new cases of COVID announced. Those 3 new cases were offset with a whopping 57 recoveries, leaving 149 active cases. There are 9 people in hospital, 3 of those in the ICU. But just how is the virus spreading? Well, we got Public Health to break down the last 43 cases in the eastern region. That's over the last week. And let's take a look at how that breaks down. 39 of those cases, or 91%, are all close contacts of previous cases. 1 case was from travel, and 3 cases are still under investigation. So right now, there aren't any confirmed community transmission cases in the last week or so. Dr. Fitzgerald calls it a good start, but before they start easing the Avalon out of level 5, they need to do more testing.
We're looking at some testing strategies that we'll need to follow through on before we really feel comfortable making that decision, and I anticipate that's going to take more than the next few days. So I think we'll be into next week before we can make a decision on it.
With the rest of the province in alert level 4, some classes resume today. We'll tell you how it went on the west coast and in central in just a few minutes.
Well, Canada received its first shipment of the AstraZeneca vaccine today, as many as 500,000 doses. Now, that shipment starts the clock for provincial vaccination programs. Many of the doses expire on April 1st, though one expert says timing should not be an issue.
Provinces have had plenty of time to ramp up, figure this out. We've heard about, in Ontario not having an online booking system, all these barriers that are there, but there's really no excuse. We need to be able to distribute many doses per week now, many, many more than we have in the past, and this should not pose a problem. Provinces must be ready for this.
Many provinces will not be giving the AstraZeneca vaccine to people over the age of 65. That's because the National Advisory Committee on Immunizations has recommended against it. Health Canada, however, is authorizing it for adults of all ages. We're expecting 7,000 doses in Newfoundland and Labrador. The province is still reviewing who will get the vaccine. As Peter said, our COVID coverage continues in just a few minutes. But first, police in St. John's are investigating a bizarre incident between a landlord and his tenants that ended with a plow breaking through a house. The landlord says it was an accident, but his tenants believe otherwise. Ryan Cook explains.
I am not moving my car. You are not moving it with this machine.
Corey Monk jumped on top of his car. It was sitting in his driveway when his landlord, Robert Regular, advanced forward with a backhoe and began pushing the car backwards. What isn't clearly captured is the moment the plow strikes the house where Monk and his girlfriend live. These frantic moments caught on camera by Corey Monk will now be turned over to the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary investigators.
The window was taken out. Obviously, there's glass everywhere. The whole bottom floor now is
and as you can see,
unsecure.
Months before all of this, Regular served his tenants with an eviction notice for late payment of October's rent. The couple says they paid the rent before the eviction date, which would legally mean they get to stay. But Regular argues they haven't paid the full amount, and a dispute resolution hearing has been delayed for months.
We've been stuck between a rock and a hard place for a very long time. And because of COVID, everything is slowed down with the tenancy board, you know, with the city, with everything. So like that's completely understandable. But because it slowed down, our landlord decided to take the law into his own hands this morning.
I spoke with Regular earlier today and he declined an interview, but he did say he never intended to threaten the tenants or strike the house, which would force them to leave. He says he was trying to push back snow from the side of the house so he could access the roof to do repairs. The tenants didn't believe him and refused to move the car. Regular says he only intended to push the car back and striking the house was just an accident. So what's going through your mind as all this is going on?
Fear.
Fear, yeah.
Fear. I don't want to leave here. We have
I've been
animals
afraid
in our
to
house.
leave the property for months because I don't know. I was fearful that something like this would happen when we weren't here.
Before police arrived, Monk says he tried to stop Regular from leaving the property. He admits he jumped on Regular's vehicle, which Regular says resulted in a smashed windshield. The tenants want their landlord charged with endangering their safety and threatening them, and the landlord wants his tenants charged with damaging his truck. It's an ugly situation that both sides say could have been avoided with a dispute resolution hearing. Ryan Cook, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, in other news tonight, some blustery weather today. Whiteout conditions and poor visibility caused multiple accidents on the TCH between Witless Bay Line and Butterpot Park today. Holyrood RCMP had to divert traffic to the old Conception Bay Highway this afternoon. That stretch of the TCH later reopened, but drivers were warned about ongoing poor visibility.
Yep, and the reason for those whiteout conditions, Carolyn, was a little itty-bitty low pressure system. You can see that on the satellite radar, the rotating counterclockwise here. That's an area of low pressure, and in behind it, we saw some snow squalls develop and some really gusty winds right along with that as well. If we take a look at the bigger picture, we do have a larger area of low pressure and a blocking pattern, and that counterclockwise rotation is bringing some Arctic air for most of the island and most of Labrador really, but then pulling in some mild air up through northern portions of Labrador and towards central Labrador as well, where temperatures are above zero. But as I mentioned, those strong winds, this is what we topped out at the airport today, 81 kilometers per hour. Those winds not nearly as strong as they have been, but we're going to see these stronger winds for the most part, anywhere from 50 to 70 kilometers per hour as we head through the overnight tonight. And even tomorrow, we're going to see those gusty winds develop again, but I will break all of that down for you coming up.
For teachers and students in Alert Level 4, today was the first day back in the classroom. For some, it'll be a mix of in-class and online learning. Here and Now's Colleen Connors has this update from Corner Brook.
Junior high and high school students pile in the front doors on this brisk winter day. Many seeing friends for the first time in 2 weeks.
It feels good to see them, but it's also like pretty dangerous at the same time because we hit level 5 again and it's just a big old mess.
The big old mess means coming off of 2 weeks of homeschooling, lockdown and an East Coast outbreak, and now entering a closed classroom with dozens of peers.
There's definitely anxiety. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't, but I think it's checked. It's chatted about. I think as a school community, we're keeping social and emotional wellness at the front and taking the time to let that take its time.
Another adjustment, Corner Brook Regional High students will alternate between in-class learning and working from home to reduce the number of students in the school at one time. Kate and Gill's classes are not full-time.
So you would have rather just stayed home?
Yeah, I feel like it would be better just to, I don't know, and plus to keep safe as well, because I feel like it's still strong out there.
The school district says this alternating schedule for schools outside the Avalon is the best way to keep students and staff safe during Alert Level 4. Staff now have to wear masks and face shields to protect their eyes at all times.
But then within an hour, probably not even an hour, someone from my administration delivered me a pair of goggles, and it was much better.
Stringer says teachers are adapting to the ever-changing rules.
When you're going a week and a half at a time, and you're trying to long-term plan, that certainly poses a challenge. So, we're all, I think, from week to week and day to day adjusting as we go and tweaking, the plans that were in my head and on paper just last week are now looking different again.
And his students are coping well.
The patience and understanding that our students have been showing, because it really is about them, and they have been truly, truly exceptional.
Stringer says just as his students will get used to this half time in the classroom, it could all change again in a couple of weeks. But he says that his students are adjusting well to this new way of learning. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Corner Brook.
While students and parents are getting used to life under the new part-time format, some are getting worried about falling behind on their studies. Here now's Garrett Berry brings us that part of the story tonight.
So it's back to school once again.
It was just different though, like coming off online where we were such in a groove and stuff, like everything's broken up now.
This pair is heading in today, but
tomorrow is like work from our books and stuff and just basically review for stuff that we learned the last day. So we're getting half the material at this point.
In short, you see your teacher one day and the next you don't.
I don't feel that we're going to get the same quality education just because it's a lot of disruption. We're given so much time off to do so little work, which, I do appreciate them giving us this time to work on it, but I would feel it was better if we still had the full day schedule like we were doing online.
No one knows for sure how long Scenario 2 is going to last. That depends on the pandemic. But these students are pretty convinced that the longer it drags on, the worse they're going to be.
Especially with university right around the corner.
I'm pursuing medical sciences at Dalhousie, so it is essential for me to finish my biology, chemistry, and math courses. Those courses will be extremely important to me next year. They're prerequisites, and me not being able to get all that knowledge would be very hard for me.
It's not even about assessments either, like getting grades. It's about learning the material to apply that to post-secondary, because for chemistry, you can't just walk in and expect they're not going to teach you that.
The school district says Scenario 2 is not only covering half the ground. It says on off days, students will be provided with follow-up work and activities that expand on the learning covered while they were in attendance. All curriculum outcomes are still expected to be covered. It says everyone will work hard to make this pivot successful. But these students say their online education was working, and they would rather stick it out.
Well, in the first few days of online school, yes, it was a little bit rushed, and we were all trying to get in the groove. But once it was set and we were in the routine, it was fine. It was a perfect system. We were all doing fine.
They call this part-time plan another change in an already pretty disrupted year. Garrett Berry, CBC News, Gander.
Some organizations and people have teamed up to form a new group to help solve the province's financial problems. They call themselves the People's Recovery Team, an alternative to the Premier's Economic Recovery Team, chaired by Moya Green. Here now's Heather Gillis reports.
It is different, of course, than the Premier's Economic Recovery Team, which was...
Angela Carter is a political science professor with the University of Waterloo. She's also the co-facilitator with People's Recovery, a team of 60 groups and individuals creating an alternative to the Premier's Economic Recovery Team. Today, they released their ideas for economic recovery in a way they say is fair and environmentally sustainable.
This, in many ways, is a counterpoint to the Premier's Economic Recovery Team.
Carter says they propose a $15 minimum wage and increasing jobs. They also want to capture revenue left on the table by increasing tax for the wealthy, corporate income tax, carbon tax, increase the HST by 1%, and create a luxury tax because she says the wealthiest are getting a sweet deal on taxes.
Some of it is directed towards making sure that the very richest people in our society that are currently still doing really well, even during COVID, that they pay a fair share of taxes going forward.
Meanwhile, People's Recovery opposes cuts to spending and services, and it's against privatization. They believe provincial overspending is a myth.
We see that Newfoundland and Labrador's program spending is actually lower per GDP than all of those provinces.
She also says the Federation of Labour President Mary Shortall, who quit PERT, is also a part of the group. Liberal leader Andrew Furey wasn't available for an interview today to respond. Instead, St. John's West candidate Siobhan Cody was.
This is exactly what I think we need in Newfoundland and Labrador.
She calls the province's tax regime competitive, but says there's always value in looking at it again, and says she takes recommendations of People's Recovery seriously.
We want everyone's views so that we could take those views and measure them and weigh them and analyze them and then come up with common solutions. That's why the Premier said there will be consultations around the Premier's Economic Recovery Team report.
Meanwhile, the People's Recovery Team says they're going to release more policy in the coming weeks, while Moya Green's report, which is delayed 5 to 6 weeks, should be out sometime in April. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, unions are reacting tonight to a story we brought you yesterday. The province is promising an American company up to $35 million to find savings in the healthcare system. The more it saves, the more it makes. Well, yesterday, the health minister said unions have been involved in the process from the get-go and that the registered nurses union in particular was enthusiastic about it. Today, President Yvette Coffey disputed that, saying nurses didn't have input in the Change Healthcare contract and are not endorsing it. But the union is supportive of a change to acuity staffing, a model that bases nursing numbers on patient need rather than the number of beds. It feels this staffing model would add more RNs, but would save on overtime and burnout.
We are very optimistic and hopeful. And Dr. Haggie, I will hold you to your comments that this is going to decrease workload and increase staffing for our members. We all know that if we increase the staffing, the core staffing, if we staff hospitals and communities and long-term care facilities based on the patient in the bed or the patient before you, that we will have better outcomes for healthcare of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
Well, NAPE also says it wasn't involved in contract talks. It's ready to give the company a chance, but not without a stern warning to keep the work environment and stress levels in mind. Jerry Earl says burnout is also a big issue.
We're quite prepared if you can collaborative and sit at the table. Please tell us what you plan on doing. But I'll tell government and I'll tell the regional health authorities, do your job. If you don't do your job, you will deal with us and our members in a very vocal and extreme fashion if they don't deal with the issues that we keep bringing forward that past governments and the current have to deal with.
A longtime MHA has passed away. Jim Hodder was 80 years old. Hodder served as an MHA for Port-au-Port for more than 2 decades. He was first elected in 1975 as a Liberal and later crossed the floor to join the Tories. He was re-elected 5 times and retired from politics in 2007. During his career, he served as Minister of Cultural Affairs and Tourism and a number of parliamentary secretary roles.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Ashley's here now with a look at the weather forecast, and it was a bright, sunshiny day today. Really cold out there and kind of tangly in some places. We heard earlier in the show that out on the highway, lots of whiteout conditions and some accidents.
Yeah, we saw some snow squalls develop through the afternoon, mainly for the southern portions of the Avalon, but then some windy conditions leading to some whiteout conditions as well. And these temperatures kind of playing a role in that as well, sitting well below zero, and you're seeing those windy conditions and then blowing all of that snow around. So let's take a look at those temperatures today, sitting around -3 as the daytime high for St. John. Similar temperatures across the board, but note those temperatures up through Labrador. 1 degree in Hopedale, Nain, Makkovik, and Happy Valley Goose Bay. It's not very often that we see Labrador as the warm spot across the province, but that's where you're sitting right now, and you're actually probably going to even see your temperatures climb another degree, maybe 2, as we head through the overnight. But temperatures where we're sitting now should be where we're sitting across the island as we head through the overnight tonight. So we have an area of low pressure, a large area of low pressure, and then we saw a little area of low pressure move through today, and in behind that you can see those squalls for the southern portion. They're starting to rotate northward now as those winds shift more west-southwesterly, and that will be the story as we head through the evening tonight. Some squalls not being picked up on the radar, but moving across the Burin Peninsula, even southern portions of the island as well. So we do have those snow squall warnings in place for the Burin Peninsula, southern Avalon, including the St. John's metro area. And then we have a snow squall watch for southwestern portion, and then anywhere north of that towards the strait, you're looking at a blowing snow advisory. So that will generally continue. The models are actually picking up really well on that squall across the island. And it looks like that's going to stick around as we head through the overnight tonight, and those onshore flurries and squalls continuing for the west coast as well as the south coast overnight tonight. And then the northern peninsula, you're still looking at the potential for some snow or light snow developing. And then note that rain for northern portions of Labrador. So you're going to see that mix with rain, already doing so for Nain. You'll see that risk as we head through the overnight tonight. And then once that warmth pushes a little bit further north, you'll get back into that snow as we head into the early morning hours. So here's where our temperatures will be sitting. Central and low-lying areas, you'll dip a couple more degrees, but it is going to be breezy tonight. Southwesterlies anywhere from 50 to 70 kilometers per hour across the board. There's those warmer temperatures I mentioned for both Nain and Happy Valley Goose Bay, but staying cold for Lab City, sitting around -17 as the overnight low tonight. Looking ahead to tomorrow, first half of the day, we'll see the risk of some squalls for the eastern area of the island, certainly the Avalon. And then as we head into the afternoon, we'll lose the ingredients for that, but a better chance of seeing those squalls develop along the west and south coast as well as the Burin Peninsula. Even some sunshine in play for the east through the day, and then you'll see a little bit of a break of that snow in the morning for Labrador, and then it'll redevelop again into the afternoon hours and continue as you head into the evening. So certainly going to be pretty unsettled across the province. You're looking at those winds again out of the southwest for most of the island, anywhere from 70 to even 80 kilometers per hour in some exposed areas, and then back down to those below zero temperatures for portions of Labrador, particularly Nain and Happy Valley Goose Bay, and again back over to that potential for snow. So that's a look at tomorrow's forecast. As we look ahead, this area of low pressure still our weather maker. I'll get into those details coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. 30 fishermen are lucky to be alive tonight after a scallop dragger caught fire and took on water off the south coast of Nova Scotia. The Atlantic Destiny later sank. It's owned by Newfoundland-based Ocean Choice International. Canadian and American crews took part in the rescue. Paul Palmer reports.
The Atlantic Destiny was a ship in terrible peril last night. In rough seas, the ship had a fire and then lost power before sending out a mayday call for help. Seas in the area were nasty and were being whipped up by howling winds. The temperature was in the minus double digits. Family members of the 31 crew quickly learned of the ship's dire situation. Hannah Fancy's brother was on the ship.
Every time the house shook from wind here, I just thought,
how much worse is that on the water? And my brother showed me videos before of the sea, and it's just nauseating looking at the pictures.
Coast Guard ships and these helicopters quickly went into action as Canadian and U.S. search and rescue personnel faced the wild conditions and eventually airlifted everyone to safety.
They were saying 20 to 25 foot seas, and we were hoisting probably from like 90 feet, and the winds were about 45 to 55 knots. So it was kind of difficult.
The Atlantic Destiny was a 43-meter trawler based out of Riverport near Bridgewater. 29 of its crew are from Nova Scotia. The damaged and powerless ship was listing in heavy seas when it eventually sunk around noon.
We can deal with a vessel in the future, but if we had lost a life, that would be far, far worse. And we're so grateful with how everyone acted and so responsibly and professionally.
Sullivan says the ship sunk in more than 1 kilometer of water. There will be no salvage operation. But for family members of survivors, that's the last of their concerns.
And I just kept saying to myself, this is a miracle. It's a miracle. So much could have happened, so much more could have gone wrong, and we were this close to losing them, and that was a lot to swallow.
This isn't the first time the ship has run into trouble. 4 years ago, the Atlantic Destiny suffered a catastrophic engine failure that caused the ship to lose power. Paul Palmeter, CBC News, Yarmouth.
My transplant happened in the afternoon. I woke up about three and a half hours later in recovery with a new lease on life.
An organ donation that reaches right across Atlantic Canada. A new episode of This Is My Story is just ahead.
Tommy, listen to this.
Oh, this is country music.
I first got interested in synthesizers probably when I was in junior high school, from what I remember.
I don't know if I would have released this album if it weren't for the pandemic.
I literally got just so involved with the guitar itself.
Well, that new series for the love of music kicks off next Thursday on Here and Now.
Well, now we have another segment to share with you in our special series, This Is My Story, where we check in with people who have lived through some challenging times to see where they are today.
Tonight, we're featuring Shane Burridge. So we first introduced you to Burridge back in 2017. The RCMP officer had been on dialysis for about 5 years at that point.
His treatments would last about 4 hours, 3 times a week, and he was anxiously awaiting a kidney transplant.
Dialysis days are write-offs because you get up at 5:30 in the morning, you go to the hospital, you come back, you get something to eat. You have a nap for probably 3 hours. You wake up and it's dark. You learn pretty quickly that dialysis certainly takes over your life, and what you could do before as a regular strong person, you really have to take it easy. The road is long, but what I'm told is never give up hope. And I've always been a fairly positive person, and I'm not going to let anything like dialysis get me down. I'm going to keep pushing.
Well, we have some good news to share. Burridge did finally get that new kidney, and along the way, he made a new friend from New Brunswick.
For sure, and now they're thanking a man from Nova Scotia for saving their lives. Here's Shane's segment of This Is My Story.
My health issues, I first noticed them in 2009. I wasn't feeling as good energy-wise. Dramatic weight loss of about 25 pounds. Inflammation. It was just a gradual decline. A little while later, we found out it was lupus. My name is Shane. I had a kidney transplant in August of 2019, and this is my story. I started dialysis in February of 2013. Wasn't much choice there then. My health was really starting to decline. My treatments were 3 to 3.5 hours each time, 3 days a week. And then I switched to a different form of dialysis, which would take 30 to 40 minutes 4 times a day. So that certainly took its toll. Getting on the transplant list was its own journey in itself. It took approximately 4 years to get on the list. Basically, you have to have a bag packed, ready to go, because you could get the call at a moment's notice, and you could have to make a beeline to the airport. It was a Friday. We were at Costco, my wife and I, and we had a cart full of items, and my phone rang, and it was transplant coordinator basically saying, "We've got a kidney for you, and you got to get to Halifax." We both were excited. Couldn't wait to get to the airport, actually. We didn't get much sleep that night, so later on that morning at 6:30, I was getting ready for surgery, because initially I was told that I was going to get in for the first thing in the morning for 7 a.m. I guess somebody else was going first, and turned out that they did. And so my transplant happened in the afternoon, and I got in at 1 p.m. and met the surgeon and the team, got hooked up, and the rest was history. I woke up about 3.5 hours later in recovery with a new lease on life.
I got on the transplant list at about the same time as I started dialysis. Just before I got my kidney, I was doing 12 hours every night, and it still wasn't enough. When I woke up, I could immediately feel the difference. It was, I just felt more energetic immediately. It was amazing. I didn't meet Shane till probably a couple of days after surgery. We were total strangers. And we only had one thing in common, and that was that we had received a kidney. We had suspicions of the donated kidney having been from somewhere close to Halifax, but shortly after I was contacted by somebody on Facebook who said, I think my husband was your donor.
The donor was Mr. Chris Williams of Nova Scotia. Chris was a former member of the Navy, of the military, and there had been an accident. He succumbed to his injuries, and we end up getting the call. It's a bit emotional in the sense that we were so happy, and on the other side of things, it's a family burying their husband and their father to 3 young children. Chris had saved my life, he saved Dan's life. With organ donation being so important, I mean, as I've learned, he saved 6 lives that day. What a tremendous thing to do.
So essentially, Chris saved or changed a number of lives, and each one of us is grateful. I know we all are.
He made the ultimate sacrifice, saving so many people, including my life.
I'm 61. I feel better now than I did at 50. Not long after surgery, I told my wife, I said, I feel like I'm 20 years old. She says, well, don't look in the mirror.
Dialysis was for 6.5 years of your life, and it consumed your time. It's funny to get up in the morning and not be tired. And so in February of 2020, I made the excellent step of going back to work. And getting back to work was great. And then I've been able to kayak, get out on motorcycle, go mountain biking, been able to walk more, go berry picking, and do things that I hadn't done in a long, long time.
Tell me about your wife, Colleen. What's her support been like?
Her support has been really steady. And we're out walking together, and we were out walking together getting ready for transplant, and I can't believe that a year has gone. And I guess that's the thing, you just face it together and you move on, right? And we're both very happy that we have a new lease on life.
I guess if I was to meet Chris, I would tell him what it's done for me and what it's done for my family. I can travel now. I'm doing renovations around the house. I just retired, and so now I'm looking forward to a nice long retirement. My life expectancy is greatly improved compared to what it would have been on dialysis. The quality of life is, as I said, better than I could have imagined. So I'd want him to know that.
Well, what I would say to Chris is just say thank you, brother. You are truly a hero, and there's a special place in heaven for you. And I will see you, and I will meet you. And I can't wait. But I got a bit of things to do first.
It's so nice to see them doing so well, Peter.
Yes, it's the next episode of This Is My Story is going to air in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll be checking in with Jennifer Hamel, who was involved in a snowmobile accident in Labrador that almost cost her life.
Looking forward to it.
Returning now to today's COVID briefing, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald says the new B.1.1.7 variant needs to be treated almost like a new virus. It spreads differently, and Dr. Fitzgerald says that means the way we interact with one another will likely have to be different as well.
What we found out from this variant is that we certainly see a lot of spread in those social situations. Where people may let their guard down a little bit more, where they may think that they're protected. We had, and I can't give you the exact number now, but we've certainly had a significant number of households, for example, even when people were isolating away from other members of their family, in a separate bedroom, maybe even using a separate bathroom, we still had a significant number of households where everybody in the household became infected, even being very cautious in that regard. So we do have to be more cautious with regard to how easily this can spread. It is going to change what we have to do with regard to gathering sizes. It's going to change what we have to look at with regard to those situations where people get together in groups, such as sports. So we do need to think about how we're going to deal with that going forward. We're going to have, given that we have this opportunity now to try to get as many people vaccinated by the end of June or middle of July as possible, I think we really need to double down on our efforts to reduce those contacts as much as possible and to reduce the risks. So it is going to look a little bit different, I think.
Well, speaking of doubling down on vaccinations, the first shipment of the recently approved AstraZeneca vaccine has arrived in Canada. 500,000 doses were delivered today. The Prime Minister says that ensures that the government's vaccination table can be met maybe even earlier than expected. The CBC's Hannah Thibodeau has the latest.
It's a welcome image. The first batch of Canada's supply of the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine arriving this morning.
Institute. That wasn't part of the calculations we had when we promised to Canadians that we'd have 6 million doses by the end of March. So now we're going to have well more than 6 million doses by the end of March.
AstraZeneca is the third vaccine approved for use in Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says with more doses of many vaccine makers coming, he's optimistic people could get their shot sooner than originally planned.
We expect all Canadians to be vaccinated by the end of September for those who want it. We are seeing, however, an increase in the number of vaccines coming into Canada, as we had hoped for. It's possible that those timelines be moved forward.
Also helping timelines move forward, the expert panel that advises the government on vaccinations, the National Advisory Committee on Immunizations, decided late today that the second dose of the vaccine can be given up to 4 months after the first. Provinces say this will help fast-track their vaccine schedule.
This approach will allow us to immunize more eligible Manitobans sooner, and this helps protect us all.
This will allow us to protect close to 40,000 extra people with one dose of a highly effective vaccine by the end of March. Real-world evidence is now emerging and shows that the first dose of COVID-19 vaccine offers protection for a longer duration.
In addition to today's shipment of 500,000 AstraZeneca doses, we're also scheduled to receive nearly 445,000 Pfizer vaccines. This would be the largest number of doses to arrive in Canada in 1 week so far. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, in other news, a guilty verdict on all counts today in connection with the deadly Toronto van attack in 2018. A judge declared the man criminally responsible for 10 counts of first-degree murder and 16 of attempted murder. One of his victims expressed relief after the verdict.
It was the best I could hope for. I think it was a fair decision, and he can spend the rest of his life in jail because he deserves it. I'm sorry he took lives and he didn't care, and you know what, you just have to be accountable for what you do.
Alec Minassian admitted to planning and carrying out the murderous rampage on April 23, 2018. His lawyer argued he should be found not criminally responsible because of his autism spectrum disorder. But Justice Anne Malloy said today he was fully capable of making a rational choice and deliberately chose to commit mass murder. She refused to name him in her decision and referred to him as John Doe, saying notoriety was his motive for the attack.
The Lake Melville Seal Hunt, an annual Labrador spring tradition. Sunday at noon and Monday at 7.
On your street, on your street. Hi, my name's Asia. I'm going to show you my 26 index shucks. Beautiful, we painted it. Normally, paint we use food coloring and water. Back to you, CBC. On your street.
Ashley is back with a look at the long range. So Ash, when are we going to see a break in these winds?
Yeah, it's been fairly windy for most of the week. It's all thanks to a couple of areas of low pressure that have been our weather maker. And the low is generally going to stick around as we head through the day on Friday. Let's take a look at the future tracker, but we will see a little bit of a relief in those winds, which is good news. Also going to see temperatures climb a little bit for eastern areas of the province. And even you can see some green there over eastern areas of the Avalon. We'll likely see some rain in the mix as well through the day on Friday. The rest of the province looking at those cooler temperatures though, and the potential for some onshore flurries again continuing for the west and south coast in that counterclockwise rotation, and then that will generally continue as we head into the early morning hours on Saturday. However, there will be a little bit more sunshine in play for eastern areas, at least for the first half of Friday. So hovering around 3 degrees for St. John's, 2 in Marystown, 0 as you head towards central, and then below 0 for coastal areas. And then up through Labrador, hanging on to these mild temperatures yet again, hovering near or just below 0 through the day on Friday. Some sunshine though finally for coastal areas of Labrador, and then back into those flurries for Lab City. Same thing into Saturday. You're not going to see your temperatures move too much. And then it's looking like a pretty nice start to the weekend. Some sunshine, chance of a few flurries for eastern areas as well as through central. But again, those onshore flurries will continue for the west coast, with your temperature in Corner Brook hovering around -3. So for St. John's and eastern Newfoundland, as we head towards the end of the weekend, looking at some sunshine, again a few flurries potentially, hovering around the 0 degree mark, and that will be the story as we head into Monday. Might see a little bit more cloud cover in play though, with the potential for flurries again. For central Newfoundland, sunshine on Sunday, that looks nice. Monday will stick around, but again, some flurries, 0 degrees as the afternoon high, and those overnight lows anywhere from -8 to -11. For western Newfoundland, unfortunately looking a little bit gray in those onshore flurries. A few peaks of sun at times though, but temperatures will be hovering around the within a few degrees of 0. And then for eastern Labrador, hanging on to these just below 0 temperatures through the weekend, and some gray skies as long as along with some flurries. And then for Lab West, sunshine will finally return on Monday, with your temperature hovering around -10. Speaking of sunshine, look at this photo. Brighton after the storm, well, this was yesterday, I guess. Karen Pinsett sent us that lovely photo there. Thank you so much for that. And if you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Gorgeous. Thanks, Ashley. Well, local business is buzzing this week after a famous client was seen plugging the brand.
Yeah, we always love a Celebrity Loves Newfoundland moment. Fogtown Barber in downtown St. John's shared this video on Facebook today of actor Jason Momoa. Take a look.
I love Newfoundland, and Chris, I can't thank you enough. Everyone in Newfoundland, I miss you. Oh, look at that! Pretty stoked, man. It's a good present in the morning. Look at that.
Pretty dope, man.
Newfoundland, what's up? Yeah.
Well, you may know him as Aquaman or recognize him from his role as Khal Drogo on Game of Thrones.
Yes, pretty enthusiastic there. Fogtown Barber wrote on Facebook, "It's pretty sweet when a former client and big-name celebrity takes time out of their day to do something like this." And they said, "Thanks for helping out a little brand from The Rock."
Carolyn, what I'm surprised at there is that Jason Momoa cuts his hair.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
It always seems so long. What was he doing needing a barber? And the beard, too. I'm not sure he's the best endorsement for a barber, but...
Yeah, and of course he did spend a lot of time in St. John's when they were shooting the local series Frontier.
Yes, yeah, so he's, and Aquaman, there was also some of that was shot here. So yeah, he's had a lot of experience in the province, and clearly, hopefully once travel is allowed again, we'll be able to invite him back for a little visit and check things out again, so.
Yeah. So Peter, no COVID briefing tomorrow, but some good news today about 3 new cases and also the new vaccination plan.
Yeah, it looks like now they're going to be able to get through everyone over the age of 70 by the end of March. Because they said there's about 76,000 people, and we're expecting about 80,000 doses of vaccine to come in this month. So it is going to move up the timetable for when people at least get their first doses. So good news for some people tonight.
Yeah, good note to end on. Thanks, Peter, and thanks everyone for watching.
Have a great night.